the ambulatory surgical centers and the hospital procedures. What privileges? What happens? And bear in mind, with the emphasis being on standard of care, standard of practice, and the health and safety of women, what happens if by imposing that the same requirements for the ambulatory surgical centers is the same for the clinics, and then having doctors have hospital privileges, what happens if the effect of that is to reduce the number of clinics from 42 to 5 or 6? What happens then?
Chairman Turner, my whole focus is on the health and safety of the woman, and you hear lots of things, but I do not believe that will happen. I think it's important to make sure that at any stage, up to the 5 months that a woman has an abortion, that she should have the same level of care as anyone going in for any other kind of procedure.
And I understand that, and I respect you for that.
Yes.
But what would take place, though, if the net effect of the bill is to reduce the number of clinics from 42 to let's say to 5, is the number I'm hearing? Would that not have the opposite intent of what you're intending, the opposite effect of what you're intending?
Chairman Turner, I appreciate your question. It's a very hypothetical question, and my intent of this bill is for the health and safety of the woman.
No. I got you. Let me ask it this way, Representative Laubenberg. If the clinics were to go out of business, let's say if 37 of the clinics go out of business, would that create would it be your belief that the woman's safety would be enhanced rather than negatively affected? What happens if 37 clinics go away?
Again, Chairman Turner, very respectfully,
right.
We're talking hypotheticals. The focus is on the health and safety for the woman.
Okay. What would it take? Do you know what the cost would be for these clinics to comply with the standards for ambulatory surgical centers?
It would probably vary from clinic to clinic depending on their location, their construction costs in that area.
Okay. And many of these clinics, with the exception of let's say like Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, many of these other clinics are in like the rural settings. Okay. Is it your belief that they have the resources, the financial resources, to comply with the bill as it currently stands?
Yes, Chairman Turner.
Okay. Is there anything that you would be willing to include in the bill that would say that the state would have to provide the necessary financial resources for these clinics to be able to comply? And the reason I'm saying it, let's assume everything in your bill is correct. Okay? Let's assume that by going to clinics from the clinics to the ambulatory surgical centers, that would enhance the safety of women. Let's just assume that be the case. Would it also then be important for the state of Texas, by imposing this bill, or enacting this bill, for the state of Texas to provide the necessary funding for these clinics to be able to meet these standards? Would that be acceptable to you?
Chairman Turner, I said this when we had the floor debate, and I'm going to stay with the same position that the way the bill is written today is the way that I would like to keep it.
No, and I understand that.
What you were asking about it.
For example, I'm Vice Chair of Appropriation, and what I'm asking is, would it be acceptable with you? And I know if, like yourself and others would join with me, would it be acceptable to say within this bill, the passage of this bill, that the state will have a corresponding responsibility to provide the funding in order to ensure that the clinics meet the ambulatory surgical center requirements? And I will tell you, to the extent we can go that far, I am open and more receptive to your bill. So I'm not.
I appreciate that very much.
So what I'm saying is that are you willing to accept a revision, an amendment to the bill that says that the funding must be provided so that the clinics can meet the financial requirements needed to meet the ambulatory surgical center standards?
Again, Chairman Turner, I said that I would like to keep the bill as it is with no changes. And I can't speak for appropriations. You probably know that better than I have, or I do. But I do believe the focus of this, and this is what I'd like to stay with, if you don't mind, is the health and safety aspect of this provision in the bill.
Right. But would you join with me in an amendment to this bill that says that for those clinics that are in rural Texas, for example, that may not have the necessary funding to meet the requirements of the ambulatory surgical centers, that the state must be responsible to providing the necessary funding for these clinics to meet the requirements in this bill.
Again, very respectfully, Chairman, I don't want to take any amendments on this bill at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Let me ask then on another issue then. Right now, many of the clinics that we're talking about have to be inspected anyway right now, according to state law.
Yes.
Okay. Would you be amenable, in order to enhance the standard of practice and for health and safety purposes, would you be amenable then simply saying that the state will have to increase the number of inspections of these abortion clinics without necessarily having to have them meet the ambulatory surgical centers? For example, what I'm saying, instead of running the risk of clinics being shut down, that the state would have to inspect these clinics more. And I would join with you in supporting that mechanism of calling for more inspections of these clinics to make sure that they meet certain health care standards. Would you be amenable to that?
I really appreciate every offer that you've made. Again, I just want to keep the bill in the same way that it is, that I'm presenting it today.
Okay. But do you think my idea is a good one, my amendment? I mean, do you think it would enhance the safety of the clinics for there to be more inspections?
I think raising them to the standards of the ambulatory surgical centers will provide the best level of medical care for that woman.
Okay. Then help me to understand how the woman's health care is enhanced if the clinic goes out of business.
Again, that's the hypothetical that I don't believe, and you may believe, but I don't believe the clinics will go out of business. And I do think having a higher standard of care that is common throughout medicine does provide better health care for a woman.
Okay. You don't want them to go out of business under your bill. Would that be fair?
No. They can be in business. I just
Right.
want them to make sure. I just want to make sure that they
Right,
have.
and that's what I'm saying. It's not your goal for them to go out of business.
That is not my intent in this bill.
You want them to stay. You want them to stay around. You simply want the standard to be raised to the level of the ambulatory surgical centers.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then will you agree with me that if they were to go out of business, that would be adverse to the health and safety of women?
Again, we're talking hypothetical.
I know, but if they go out of business, what happens?
I do not believe they will go out of business.
But if they were to go out of business, what would
That's a
happen?
hypothetical.
Will you agree that it would not be in a woman's best health and safety interest if they were to go?
I agree that raising them to the standard of an ambulatory surgical center will be the best way to to provide the health and safety for a woman.
Okay. And then on the issue of the doctor having privileges, it's my understanding that it's pretty much up to the hospital to decide what those requirements are.
Yes, it is.
A hospital doesn't have to grant you privileges to be a doctor. What happens then if a hospital says no to these doctors?
Then the hospital and then the doctor could find out why and raise his standards. 2/3 of the abortion physicians have hospital privileges now. And I think, it's a local community issue, and usually if the doctor is there, part of the community, I think he and the hospital can work that out.
Right, but the hospitals, I mean, you readily acknowledge the hospitals are not obligated to grant the privileges. Would you be acceptable to an amendment that says that if this bill passes, that the hospitals cannot then refuse these doctors' permission?
No, Chairman Turner.
Okay. And then lastly, there are no exceptions to this bill at all.
There are exceptions. I said earlier when I laid it out, to the physical life of the mother and the severe fetal abnormality.
Okay. But the exception regarding rape, you're not open to that amendment.
There is rape and incest now, and my bill would take it through 5 months.
But after 20 weeks, is there an exception for rape and incest? There's not.
At 20 weeks, it's 5 months. It is over half the pregnancy.
Okay, let me pause right now.
Respectfully,
Thanks.
yes.
Now, I understand. I would like to work with you about amendments that I believe would be a benefit for the health and safety of women as it relates to this bill. I think more inspections, I think, would be one. I think it's important if we're going to impose these mandates, and I know there are many people in this room who have consistently been opposed to mandates being imposed on local communities. And I would simply say, if we're going to impose the mandates in this bill, then the state should be responsible for providing the necessary funding to the local communities. Because based on my read, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the only areas that may still be able to satisfy the conditions of the bill would be Houston, Dallas, and probably San Antonio. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so what I would like to think that if raising the standards is in the best safety and health interest of women, and I'm not going to argue with anybody on that, let's assume that is the case, that it creates enhanced safety for women, then the state should also be willing to ante up the necessary funding to ensure that we don't lose the clinics as we raise the standards. Now, I'm prepared to join with you on that. If that is the goal, if that is the intent, and if we are to support the bill, I'm prepared to join with you on that. But I do think that we should not be imposing mandates of any kind on local communities if the state is not also willing to provide the necessary funding to ensure that they meet state mandates. And I don't think that's not a new position. That is a philosophy that I've learned from many people in this room, sitting next to a few. I would hope that we would be willing to carry it forward in this particular bill. And that is the amendment that I intend to carry forward in this committee, Mr. Chairman, if not here, laid on the floor. That if we're going to do this, then I think the dollars for this bill, so that if we do not lose the clinics, should be provided by the state. Otherwise, do not impose unfunded mandates on local communities.
Mr. Chairman.
And I'm going to go ahead and recognize Chairman Smithy. I know, looking for you all have